This is Mission Spotlight reporting from Portugal, westernmost land of continental Europe. 350 miles long and 135 miles wide, Portugal is part of the great Iberian Peninsula. 400 years ago, this small nation was a vast empire that included colonies in Africa, Asia, and South America. Daring seamen like Vasco da Gama, Diaz, and Cabral launched the great age of European discovery. The Tower of Belém on the shore of the Tagus River in Lisbon stands as a memorial to Portugal's golden age. Built as a fortress in 1521, it marks the area where Vasco da Gama sailed into the unknown and found a sea route to India. Nearby, the Monument to the Discoveries honors Henry the Navigator and other world-mapping personalities. The great city of Lisbon was once the princess of the world, before whom even the oceans would bow. The city is positioned on 7 low hills overlooking the Tagus estuary. It was November 1, 1755, when Lisbon suffered one of the greatest natural disasters ever to strike a heavily populated area. Few buildings survived that devastating earthquake. During high mass, the city was violently shaken. Fire spread from candles in the churches. People rushed to the Tagus River only to be swallowed up by a huge wave. Tens of thousands perished with all the riches of Lower Lisbon. The ruling monarch Pompey said, "Bury the dead and feed the living." From the rubble, he rebuilt the city with majestic squares and broad avenues. Today, Portugal is beginning to rest from its ruling power and the conquests of the past. Struggles of the 1970s have been for survival from costly wars in Africa, political revolution, and severe economic problems. Fortunately, much of the charm and quiet beauty of the land goes on living. The countryside is a fairyland of castles, palaces, and monasteries that appear to have grown up with the landscape. The people are warm, exuberant, uninhibited. 1/3 of the 9 million people in Portugal live in 2 port cities of Lisbon and Porto. Lisbon is the capital, and Porto is a well-known harbor that specializes in port wine and also gave the country its name. Many Portuguese live in fishing villages along the coast. In small boats, men brave the rugged Atlantic waters for their catch of cod, sardines, and tuna. Oak forests in central and southern Portugal yield thousands of tons of cork each year. By law, a tree can be stripped only once in 9 years. Stripping begins when a tree is 20 years old, and production ends when it is 120 to 150 years old. Resilient, heat-resisting, and sound-absorbing, cork has hundreds of uses. The bark weighs 1/4 as much as water. Air inflates its cells like tiny balloons. During 1979, the 5,000 Seventh-day Adventists in Portugal celebrated the 75th anniversary of the first missionaries of this church to their country. It was the year 1904 when 23-year-old C.E. Renfro and his bride left the United States for Spain. When they reached London, a cable directed them to proceed to Lisbon, Portugal. They did not know the Portuguese language. They had little money, and their first salary check was missent to Spain. Young Renfro sold his violin to buy groceries, then began giving English lessons. Through the lessons, he presented the third angel's message. After 2 years, 4 converts were baptized. At the time of the anniversary celebration, the president of the Euro-Africa Division addressed the ministerial force of Portugal.
Quand vous pensez à l'expérience de Jean-Baptiste,
Quando pensais na experiência de João Batista,
il nous a été dit que Jean-Baptiste a dû préparer
group
le chemin
was
pour la
somber.
première venue du Christ.
All were aware of the long periods of time during the past 75 years when the Seventh-day Adventist Church had little freedom to evangelize, when their schools and seminaries were closed, when their boys in military services were denied privileges, when church members were accused of being communists, and when some were even imprisoned. Pastor Quim Dias, educational director for the Portugal Conference, stood at the gate of his boyhood church near Porto.
When I was a boy, this was my church. Those were difficult days for the church. When we did missionary work, the people would tear our Bibles. Sometimes the mobs threw stones at the church. But today it is different. This is the time of opportunity for the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Pastor Diaz recalled how the membership in this little church grew until it no longer accommodated the people. Local authorities refused a building permit, so the church asked permission to build an annex. Behind the little corner church, they erected a large, beautiful sanctuary. And like Samuel, they set a stone between the 2 places of worship. The words read, "Hitherto hath the Lord helped us," 1 Samuel 7:12. Following the 1974 revolution, opportunity emerged for Seventh-day Adventists to reopen some of the church schools. No time has been lost. Today, 400 children are enrolled in church schools in grades 1 through 9. The great need now is to extend Christian educational opportunities through the secondary level. In 1975, church members at Porto exercised faith in setting up an ambitious school program for their children. One member said God had blessed him so abundantly that he purchased a bus to transport the children from areas too distant to walk. A fine classroom complex was built to serve the first 9 grades. The Portuguese Conference has now selected this school at Porto to be expanded into a full academy program, the first in Portugal. A portion of the mission offering received on Sabbath, December 29, will fund dormitories for this secondary school. Pastor Diaz says,
Today I am 43, and all my life I wait for this school.
He went on to say that Portugal has had small training schools, but nothing for secondary students. Over the years, the young people have had many problems in public schools. Another encouraging report from Portugal is the work of 60 colporteurs who go from door to door selling great controversy, children's stories, and health books and magazines. Many of these books are printed locally by public presses. Others are imported from the Adventist Publishing House in Brazil. A book depository is maintained to serve the literature sales force. In 6 years, over 200,000 health books have been sold. Sales for all books total $500,000 a year.
This is the Voice of Hope, Adventist World Radio.
Ici la voix de l'espérance.
Hier ist die Stimme der Hoffnung.
From powerful Marconi transmitters in southern Portugal, international shortwave broadcasts of the Seventh-day Adventist Church are relayed into Europe and North Africa. The Voice of Hope radio ministry began October 1, 1971, with Alan Steele as station manager. The present manager, Ron Myers, reports that within 5.5 years, broadcasts expanded to 3 other locations. Use of a transmitter on the island of Malta started in 1974. In 1975, says Myers, broadcasts began in Sri Lanka, once known to the world as Ceylon, and in early 1977, Chinese broadcasts originated in the island of Macau, across the bay from Hong Kong. 8 recording studios in Europe, 6 in Asia, and 2 in North America are responsible for providing 25.5 transmitter hours of programming each week in 24 languages. A sign points the way in Portugal to the area from which this international outreach of the church is beamed. The word means silent mountain. This lonesome spot in Portugal is the main launching ground for Adventist shortwave broadcasts that reach 2 million people each week in more than 50 countries. From the seasoned land of Portugal, this is Mission Spotlight.